episode 5 of Meet the Toberts. We're a podcast about thriving in and out of medicine, no matter where you are in your training or your career. Mm-hmm. And our topic today is about Family Matters Part 2. We hit on Part 1 last time. We're talking about the middle years of kids, but let's do intros. I'm Sue Tobert. I am a retired pediatric cardiologist.
I'm Daren Tobert, and I'm a retiring sleep medicine physician, retiring very soon. So pretty excited. And together we've got over 80 years of learning and practicing medicine.
Oh my gosh, that's almost like a full century.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, first of all, we want to just share with you that we are coffee snobs, and we've been coffee snobs since med school, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. So this is a digression. This is a little kind of bunny trail, but we order coffee online. We've done it multiple different companies over the years. We love to try new coffee. We are really particular, like at restaurants when we go to coffee shops and that. What else makes us a coffee snob?
Well, we have a very expensive coffee machine.
Oh, that's true. We do. Okay. So when we built our retirement home, which is a huge blessing, and we put in a Mila coffee machine that can do like cappuccino and espresso and everything. And so we keep like little paper cups of like to hand out to guests who come, or when people come to work on the house, they get a cappuccino and we put a little lid on it and hand it to them. However, I prefer my glass cup. And can you share what you like about yours?
So yeah, I've got a Yeti and keeps it warm.
All right. Anyway, so we're coffee snobs. You know that about us now. And today I want to also share another little story. So our oldest daughter, is in med school. She just started her 3rd year, which means yesterday she started on the wards, right? Mm-hmm. And so she calls us at the end of the day, but we were grocery shopping. We're driving home with the car full of groceries, and we're listening to her talk, and she's sharing about her day. And after we finished that, it was a brief conversation. What I noticed is you and I both got really quiet and we were introspective. Like I was thinking back to my first day on the wards, all of that new stuff, like the overwhelm that you're trying to keep up. You're looking at these residents who you're thinking, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get there? What came to your mind? I'm just curious.
Yeah, just kind of the circle of life and the passage of time and how, I'm within 2 months of retiring, or about 2 months to retirement, and my daughter's just starting on the wards. It's just kind of one of those coincidences that was powerful.
Yeah. And then we kind of landed on, wow, we've had like almost 40 years in medicine. 40 years at least, or here we are 28 years into our careers and we're retiring. That's like more than a quarter of a century. Then I felt old in the moment personally, but then it passed. So, yeah.
Seems like there's more and more reminders of how old we are as time goes on.
The aging process, mentally, physically, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to our circle of trust for part 2 of Family Matters. This is the middle years, and we kind of landed on how medicine is actually a family career. And we realized like we balanced 2 busy practices while raising a family. And when the kids reached middle years, it was just a lot more labor intense. And balancing and connection were really important for us. And we didn't always do it well, right? And we recognize that you may not be at the point of having children yet or may never have children, but there's still some organizational pieces maybe that might be of benefit. And otherwise, just sit back and enjoy, because we're going to share some stories and maybe some of our not so sparkly, stellar moments parenting. You want to touch just on like the work-life balance theme for a minute?
Yeah, well, work-life balance is not a great terminology. Just it implies that it's possible to balance work and life, and I don't like that it actually separates work from life. Work is part of life, and so like it's not just one or the other. So I don't like the binary thing of it. I think getting a good harmony in your life while you go to work and while you're away from work is important, and obviously getting those in enough of a proportion that you can feel like you can make it. If it just feels like you're constantly overwhelmed, then life's not good, and it is depressing and kind of hurts you in all spheres of your life. So trying to achieve some of that is important, I think, and I certainly learned that through our middle years of raising kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, it is more integrated, all interwoven, like work life interweaving, and maybe it's work family interweaving more than anything. So how do you know if you're at overwhelm? Like, I think that's different for everybody. I think it took me years to learn when I was like maxed out.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I used to kind of pride myself on being this mom who could have a cardiology career and raise 3 kids and
Yeah.
connect with the neighbors and do craft things and all of that, have fantabulous birthday parties for the kids. And now well, first of all, I don't have the energy to do that anymore, but I just don't know that I did it well necessarily, because deep down, I think now there was mounting overwhelm. So how do you know when you're overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're who doesn't in medicine get addicted to caffeine at some point, you know, but if you're needing chemicals to manage your life, and you are finding that you're really not sleeping a normal amount, as a sleep physician, I'd say 7 or more hours at least, then there's clearly something impacting your well-being and your physical well-being. So, it seems like mentally we can function on adrenaline and caffeine for a long time, but then looking back at the close of our careers, that clearly is not healthy, guys. So, and I don't know that I've got any answers. Med school is still brutal. It's probably worse than, just talking to our daughter, it's probably worse than what we went through in the 80s, late 80s and 90s. And so I don't have solutions, but I would just point out that it's very helpful to think about that more earlier in life. Very easy to put it on the back burner. And that's where I'm guilty for sure, is just, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of a philosophy. And that is not really good for you in the long run. So if you want to live a long, healthy life and have healthy relationships and family and all of that, then pay attention to these things and try to achieve some form of balance, I think is the message. It's not like I've got an answer to it, because I was unbalanced for a long time. Yeah.
Well, and maybe it's being a bit more bold in setting boundaries. Like, I mean, I think here's the thing: work will suck it out of you. It will take it out of you and continue to take it out of you unless you say no. So what's reasonable call? What's reasonable number of hours? What's a reasonable way to still be able to capture that family time? I too was not great at setting boundaries. Maybe I got a little more bold the older I got, and but maybe not.
Well, it took me a while. Like just 5 years ago, I dropped a day a week and I lowered my FTE to 0.8. And I think you might be in a medical center that tells you that you can't do that. But, when you're ready, and maybe even you fleshed out another couple options, you go to them and say, I'm dropping to 4 days a week. And then you got to have walkaway power to do that, but there'd be very few medical centers that wouldn't acquiesce and give you what you're after. Best thing I ever did in my medical career was dropping back. Each time that I backed down from doing critical care just to doing pulmonary, which is still a hospital specialty, dropping down to doing sleep medicine, a clinic specialty, my life improved dramatically. I can't emphasize enough.
Yeah.
And then dropping a day a week just made it very, very sustainable. And I feel like even though we're able to retire now, we're going to retire now, I feel like if I had to keep working, it would not be a burden. I think it would fit very well with my life. So I would encourage you to think about your career in the long run. Maybe earning just 20% less total income will buy you way more than 20% value in terms of quality of life and family balance, whatever we're trying to achieve here. So think about backing off earlier and creating something that's truly, truly sustainable. Work is just way more fun too when when it's not just like you're walking into the building with your head down
Right.
and already miserable. So much better to back off, work less, and yes, make less money, but you can figure out the money part for sure. And I think that's just something to think about early in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So we knew early when we were thinking about a family that it would, like, I wanted to be part-time. So I was always 4 days a week. And that gave me then the opportunity to have more responsibility about running kids to their well visits and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, which was a good way that we kind of integrated things, which was also pretty traditional, right? I mean, I was the mom doing most of that part of it. And honestly, that babyhood part means a lot of sleepless nights. So trying to be on call and be a busy parent with a kiddo waking up at night. I mean, you're right. Sleep is overrated. It goes out the door during all of those middle years. And then I'm thinking about, like, the kids get sick, or are they in daycare, or the nanny calls and can't come. Like, there's just so much juggle during that period of time that I think that a lot of other stuff gets put on hold, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, right? Like, um, we hardly did date nights. Like, I know they talk, oh yeah, get out, once a week and have
Yeah,
a date. We put that kind of on the back burner. I don't know
yeah,
if
we
that
did.
was right or wrong.
Well, we did, and other things, exercise.
Mhm.
Our spiritual lives took a hit as well, because as many Sundays as not, one of us was on call, and there were times in our practice where you were always on call.
Yeah,
It's because you're solo in peds
right.
cardiology. So, um, the work just does imbalance you. I found always throughout my career, not having a day off during uh, business hours was a real problem. I couldn't go to the
Right.
bank. I couldn't go to get a haircut. I couldn't, I mean, just stuff like that. So having that even half a day off um, during the work week
Yeah,
was missing
yeah.
for me.
Well, and I guess we just share this warning that because of the career that you've chosen in medicine, you're already a giver of your talent and resources. And we then, because we're givers and healers, you tend to err on the side of giving more of yourself, accommodating others more. And then we sometimes play this game in our mind, the kind of shoulds and coulds, and yeah, say yes to this. We can't say no. Yeah, we better show up, better help out more, right? And that can be to your detriment. So don't forget about yourself during those middle years, the baby years. I mean, all the years in your career. Really fight hard to find that balance.
Yeah.
So, what did we do well, dear? I mean, like,
Yeah. Well, we did try to, I think, maximize the family time when we had it.
yeah,
So one little thing I did with our girls when they were between those, infant and tween high school years, was I did hooked on phonics with each of them. And I saw that the way they were teaching our kids how to read
mhm,
didn't jive with me. I learned reading by phonics, and so I purchased a program. We did that together as they were 4 or 5 years old,
yeah, yeah,
and I taught them how to read. We got them involved in sports, and so taking them to hockey or to gymnastics, and those were just good family times too. And we'd share time
yeah.
in the car and share time, watching them engage the world.
Yeah.
And then early on too, I read a book about strong fathers, strong daughters, strong daughters. We'll have that referenced for you in the show notes. But a tradition of monthly dates with dad. So just one girl out with dad. She gets to pick what we're going to do. It would often involve stopping for a meal, and I think they just really enjoyed that,
Yeah.
and it deepened our relationships for sure.
And they still want those,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. Now even my daughter in med school still has it on our shared calendar that there's a date with dad, and they come up every 3 months, one for each girl per month. So, or one
Yeah.
one for each girl every 3 months,
Yeah.
because we have 3 girls. So 4 times a year they get their date with dad. Yeah.
Well, they also connect a ton with you in between around
Sure.
finances and budgeting and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So we did divide duties as best as we could. I'm just thinking like, because had a period of time in my career was where I was the only pediatric cardiologist in the area, on call a ton. If he could make a kid event, then I chose to let that satisfy me. That it's like no regrets, right? That parent guilt that we talked about before. We're a team. If he can get there and I can hear about how it went, the hockey game that they were playing, or gymnastics meet or whatever, then that it was sufficient for me. And I needed to make that choice, draw that line in the sand, that I wasn't going to keep wishing and ruminating that I had been there. Take lots of pictures, right? That's what everybody did. Send them to me while you're there. Thank goodness for tech. And then other times we like totally flew by the seat of our pants. So we both were on call, and people have asked us over the years, well, how did you manage that? That sounds crazy. And we, as much as we tried to coordinate our calendars, there were times where maybe one of us was out of town and the other one was on call. We still have 3 little kids at home, or we're both on call when you were in the ICU, I'm thinking. So how did we do that? Well, at times we did warm handoffs at midnight in the Walgreens parking lot. So one of us could be on the way in and the other could be heading out, and we hand off the 3 little girls. There were a handful of times where you were working in the ICU. I get called into the NICU for a critical cyanotic baby in the middle of the night. I remember one time our CEO neonatologist, Jeff Thompson, bless his heart, calls me in for a cyanotic baby. I'm like, I've got to bring my 3 kids in. This is like 2 a.m. And he took them off to sugar them up and entertain them and play puzzles and games with them in the break room in the NICU while I was working with the echo tech and stabilizing the baby. So there's an example of another warm handoff, right? You pull in your resources, and I am forever grateful for how the nurses took care of my girls, even on the days they had to come in.
Yeah, and that's just reality. So you leverage your teams, but obviously not optimal for the kids.
Right.
But they have, I think, fond memories of those times. They still talk about it today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to make a confession, though. There was the one time that I don't even remember which girl had strep throat, and it was a morning where I was dropping the kids off at school, and literally as I pull into the circle drive at the school to drop them off, the one who had a little scratchy throat and had the strep test the day before seemed pretty good. No fever, nothing. I'd given her Tylenol. You're already at work. And my phone rings. I answer it. It's the clinic nurse. And she's like, well, she's positive for strep. And I remember saying, she has strep? Of course, the 3 girls in the back hear this. And I'm like, okay, I'll pick up the antibiotic prescription. And anyway, I turn around and I'm like, look, you don't have a fever. I know you got a scratchy throat. I have a full clinic. Please just go into school. Don't tell anybody you have strep. So confession, I sent my kid to school with strep throat, right? Okay, so then what happens is she does get a fever like by afternoon when the Tylenol wears off, get a call from the nurse. She's already told the nurse that she's strep positive, but that mom said for her to go into school, right? Like, oh my gosh.
She turned you in.
She turned me in. So then what ended up happening is he could get off early and go pick her up. But this is the juggle. It's crazy when the kids are sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what comes to mind too is, right, you catch stuff when your kids are sick, and how many people show up at work ill, but you're not even functioning effectively, especially since COVID. I think employers have kind of cracked down on that, but it's a challenge just trying to balance all of that.
Yeah. So, some tools for helping balance this incredible level of chaos.
Yeah, tools.
So we used tech. You can really debate whether cell phones are good for kids or not. Probably not. But they were kind of new, believe it or not, when our kids were young. Of course, when we grew up, we had no cell phones. They were brand new once we got into medicine. And so new thing. And, at the time there was debate, when do you get your kids a phone or whatever? Our kids got phones in 5th grade. From fairly early on, Apple had shared calendars. So we had calendars that we all belonged to, one for each kid and one for the family, and anybody could update what's going on. So that really helped, I think, to coordinate things, just for people to be reminded what was going on. So that was important. Reminders apps to remember to, chores, getting things done. It takes 2 seconds to put in a reminder into your phone. So at least you can keep a to-do list up to date. Financial software, I leveraged all kinds of, banking tools, mobile banking, automated transfers, automated bill pay, everything you can possibly automate to make things happen, without your needing to deal with it weekly, monthly, whatever, all help to stay connected.
Yeah.
As a
Well,
family.
and what you're trying to do is get back time. Like we already hinted at that, right? Is what can you do in your life when you're a busy family to get back time? And what I hear you saying is one, you can actually get the kids involved using tech, so it's helpful. When do I go pick up the kid from gymnastics? Did it finish early or not? They can text me, and then I know I need to leave rather than sitting outside for 30 minutes, right? So, I mean, that's maybe not the best example, but it did help us stay connected as a family and know what's going on. I'm thinking of a time before our oldest got cell phones. It was winter. The school bus broke down, had no way to know why she was late. I was actually at home waiting for her to get off the bus and called the bus line. They didn't know what was going on with the bus because the drivers had been told they could not have their cell phones on the bus. So this broken down school bus of kids in a neighborhood, not anywhere rural, had no way of connecting with even their home base to get help. And then it turns out that one of the kids lived across the street. The mom came out, she used her phone, the bus line got connected. But like an hour and a half later, a parent that I did not even know dropped my kid off at my house because they were helping out the bus line. I was over the top crazed about that. That just should not happen. And that was around the time we're just giving our kids phones because we want to know where they are. We can check on their status, short of putting a microchip in your child, right? So it gave us peace of mind because I don't need that extra layer of worry as a busy working mom about why is my kid not home from school on time, as an example. So you mentioned also the whole kind of banking piece, and how does that like kind of tie into the kids? I want you to talk about, because I love this idea that he had about the bank of dad. So can you share a little bit about?
Sure. So, just thinking about what financial topics the kids need to understand when they're in this phase from, basic understanding about the world up to tween years, and how to start to prep them for financial success in their lives. So, the very earliest thing you do is just use cash because it's physical and their concrete minds kind of get cash. And so Dave Ramsey has some great stuff for kids. Look at Dave's website. Envelopes or just even like buckets, like coffee can. And you give the kid a little bit of money every week and you pay them for chores that they're willing to do. And so they start to connect money with work, and they start to see money as a flow where it comes as a steady stream. And then you can introduce the whole concept of savings just by having them divide their money up into 3 buckets, for spending, for saving for later, for a big thing, and for giving. Early on, you want to teach your kids that it's okay to give money, and it's a great feeling to give money. So you have them experience that early on, and that's just like dollar bills in or coins in a coffee can initially, and then as time moves on, you can introduce them to the concept of a bank. Now, I didn't originate the Bank of Dad. That was a book I read. You can find that, and we'll try to find it and link it in the show notes. But excellent concept where you function as the kid's bank. You get yourself a little cash box, and you maintain accounts for each kid where they can do their saving in the bank. And then you introduce interest. Initially, we paid them 100% per month on their savings. So if they saved $1, they'd get an extra $1 for saving. So you introduce the concept of interest and how it pays to wait and to save and so on. So, and then we did things like just introducing the concepts of the marketplace, buying and selling things. So we had in the summertime, we had a snack shack. So the kids couldn't just snack all day long and then demand more groceries. We had, you created the snack shack as basically a big bin with favored snacks in it, and each snack had a price, and they would get paper money, just monopoly money really, from the nanny for doing things or for well behavior or whatever, and then they could redeem their cash for snacks, and they actually did. It was a market. If they didn't perform, they didn't get the snacks. So of course, our kids never went hungry, but
they still talk about the snack shack.
Yeah.
Remember when you did that to us?
So yeah, the realities of having to earn your
treats,
extras in life, right? So and then as soon as they could start babysitting, they did the safety courses and got certified, and then they could start their own little enterprises, and they did. They all three are babysitters to this day.
Nannies, yeah,
and nannies, yeah. So those were some fundamentals to do in those tween years. Oh, the other thing we did was probably at about age 9 or 10, the allowance we gave them an allowance based on not just like a gift of money every month, but it was actually the amount that we would have normally spent on their clothing. So just clothing, one category. We just, because we tracked our finances, we knew how much they got on clothing. Yeah. So at age 9 or 10, I forget, I think it was 10, we just gave the kids their clothing budget. And we said, okay, now you have to start thinking about clothes. And you've got to look at your closet, see what you've got in there, decide where you need new outfits or new items. And you've got to think ahead. So, winter's coming. You got to make sure you got warm clothes and boots. Back to school's coming. If you want to have a new outfit, you might have to save for a couple months through the summer to have the money to buy a nice new outfit. So that is something that I think any kid can start to manage, is just their clothing budget. I could imagine with boys, they may just choose to wear the world's worst clothes and never buy anything and spend the money on video games instead. But you can put rules around that and rein it in. So, but it starts to introduce the idea of saving for future needs. And, then when they don't save and they don't have warm clothes, you can start to have a conversation and say, okay, see what happens. I'm not saying send your kids to school cold, but it's something to at least have a conversation about. And I think there's a lot of learning that happens with that.
The other thing I liked about handing off the clothing budget is I then didn't need to be responsible for their clothes. I mean, for those several early years, they came to the understanding of, what's reasonable to wear. And we kind of set those guidelines too. Like they're not going with their midriff bare or anything like that. So, and short shorts or whatever. So we wanted them to also be mindful of what their persona in the world.
Yeah.
But handing off the clothing budget and having, I would take them to the mall, or one of us would kind of drop them off there, and they'd get to go to their little shops and spend. And
So
they came out with reasonable choices. And
yeah, well, eventually, but there's a couple of learning pieces around that when you're turning over a budget of something to the kids. Okay, number one is you have to actually turn it over. Okay,
don't want to micromanage.
You can't start to put extra rules on that. If it's their money and they've saved it and they're going to spend it on something that you think is stupid, let them make the mistake now.
That's right.
Let them make it now. Let them buy the cheap crap that's going to fall apart. Let them learn that lesson with a small amount of money so that they're not doing it when they're 35 and, buying some car or something really dumb. Okay. So that's number one, is you have to let them make mistakes. And then number two is you can't set too many rules, right? If it's edgy, if it's something where it's like, well, that's not what I would choose for you, you can maybe have a conversation, say, here's why I don't think you should do that. But then you have to release them.
Absolutely.
And let them do it. So that's actually learning for the parent, to release your kids and start to, little Johnny's got to make mistakes before he learns. That's how humans learn things in the world. So you've got to release that a little bit and let them make some mistakes. And that's where we sometimes had conflict about like, dude, you got to let them decide. I know it's stupid, but you got to let them do it. So just some things to think about with regard to money in those middle years.
You bring up a good point, though, because the older we've gotten as parents, the more aligned you and I are about just letting them do their thing and let it go and be their mistake to learn from. And it's thankfully never been anything major and serious.
Yeah. Well, theoretically at 18, they're kind of on their own anyway, from a legal standpoint, right? You have less and less influence, or at least legal influence. You could certainly have a lot of personal influence, but it's good to start that process when they're in that tween phase.
Yeah. Kind of, what can you hand off that gives them growing responsibility, kind of frees you up a little bit because you're already busy in your careers. And I guess it's not about hovering about them as they enter those different phases of growing up, giving them this kind of sequential freedom is really important.
Yeah. Well, giving them freedom gives you also freedom, because then, when you're in the store with the kid, it's not 1,000. Daddy can have this. Daddy can have that. Daddy can have this. It's a simple thing. Do you have the money?
Right.
If you don't have the money, then you can't buy the thing. Right. And then they get to learn about taxes when they think it's $5 and they take it to the counter and it's $6 because of taxes. They get to learn about that. So, there's some real learning and growth that happens through that, and it kind of frees you. You don't have to answer questions. You just say, hey, you have mechanisms in place to get money. You know how to get it. If you want more money, you got to work harder and save more. And so those are good ways of starting to introduce it. We started with clothing. I think it's a great category for that. You don't want to start with something like food, right? Because that's more essential than clothing. Clothing's kind of essential, but
but there's a lot of floof. For 3 girls, clothing was kind of
it's a big deal with girls.
Big deal, yeah. The other thing too is, even though, I don't know if this is striking anybody as sounding harsh, what we're sharing, there was a lot of love with this too. So we're going to the store, bring your envelope for spending. Yep. Oh, great. You got $10. Good. Maybe you want to buy something. Maybe you don't want to buy something. And, we're just still really there. And I feel like this whole money thing in the Bank of Dad really grew us as a family together, really, really in a unique way. And we've shared the Bank of Dad with a lot of young couples and colleagues that we work with. So we think it's a great concept. We're going to wrap up now. So in conclusion, life happens. Do the best you can. Is it about balance? Is it about integration? Is it about harmony? I don't know. Whatever resonates with you best. But work life, work family, with a career in medicine, it's a career for your family too. They're going to be toddling along with you as you're going through all your work experiences. And so building that support, staying energized, being intentional with these fundamentals that we talked about today, connecting with your kids, how can you pour into them, but being willing to, if you're in a team, do it as a team. If you're a single parent, we talked about building your team very early on in the podcast series, utilize your resources. And what else would you add for a conclusion from today?
Yeah. So just, especially if you're a two doctor couple, it's very, very challenging. There's a huge premium on time. And so just really think that through. Spend a little bit of time thinking that through, setting out time, and then just some of the fundamentals of life and money and family interactions and again, spending just some quality play time, fun time. These are all crucial things for building long-term healthy relationships with kids.
Yeah. And don't be shy of tech. That's our other takeaway.
Right? Don't be shy of tech, and reach out to talk with other parents about how they do it. I mean, I think I learned a lot along the way from others as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. We'll be back with part 3, Family Matters, where we're going to dive into what happens when they get into the tween years and growing up past that, the psychological game of that whole parenting aspect. Enjoy your day.
Yep. Bye, everybody.